in depth, just in depth that they're going.
And that's pond technology, and there's also the closed loop systems. And she had the photobioreactors. So there's a lot of different sort of scenarios. I mean, like our photobioreactors are like 10 feet tall. Typically, our modules are about 10 feet tall. But we have isolated a certain part of the spectrum. We have internal lights that are there.
So your facility is all indoors.
It is all indoors.
And so you have like, what's the?
That's what I was getting at. The internally there's a like I can't talk too much about it honestly. It's proprietary, but internally there's a certain part of the light spectrum that we've isolated, and then we put in a certain species of algae that works really well with that. And we also have a patented catalyst that we put in, and so we're able to grow and harvest the algae within a 24-hour period.
The brown algae isn't as good as green algae in that sense because.
No, we're using green algae. Yeah.
Valerie?
Yeah, so in essence, you've developed an algae grow light.
Yes, that's in essence what we've done. I mean, again, it's not to say one technology is better than the other, or it's going to take a combination of things. The one advantage that we have is that we don't have to be in super sunny North Carolina or super sunny Florida or super sunny Arizona or whatever to be able to use our technology. So that's an added bonus, and there's a little bit more or a lot more control in that scenario. But again, it's cost prohibitive in the sense that it takes a lot to get it done. It takes a lot to get it going.
And it's interesting. There's so many different variations of photobioreactors. Vertigrow Technologies have these baffled plastic bags. One company has like a triangular shaped bag that optimizes the sun as it comes in. There's a lot of different ways to grow it. So
yeah, and it's going to take all of it's going to take all of these ways. I can't stress that enough. It's going to take them all for it to really be prolifically effective.
Sure, you're talking about you could do that anywhere, but I did hear, or I heard before people, I put it up here, like NC is well placed to go big, and I wonder if you all would comment on that. I heard reference to the, infrastructure, transportation infrastructure, R&D, that sort of thing. Is NC impactful? Political will, is that be particularly good here?
I think it's getting there. I think it's definitely getting there. There's a lot of awareness, and again with the Biofuels Center and some of the legislation that's come down. I mean, I think that in policy class, we're talking about political will versus like public, awareness and that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, I think that it's well placed in that sense, and I think that I want to let people that work here and do this and work here and talk. But yeah, I mean, that's what it seems like to me, and that's why I've been pushing it with our company. Also, I love North Carolina. I want to stay here. So, but yeah. I think it's very well placed.
And do you think that the 10 by 10 is a part of that spirit that has been formed the political will to some extent? This goal, you all separately all refer to it. It's a big part of the race, sort of, is it? It's changed people's.
It's an aggressive initiative. It's definitely it's definitely lending itself towards being a favorable place.
Yeah, and I think we have some unique things that are right here in our area that folks may not take as such an incredible resource that we have, and that's the academic expertise that we have. And we're sitting here with UNCW Center for Marine Science. You go right up the coast, you've got CMAS with NC State, you've got Duke, you've got Chapel Hill, all within that region. You've got 2 military bases right there with the Department of Defense really interested in the food and fuel for the military project that they're moving forward. And Pamlico Sound is interested in starting a 25,000-acre algae farm up there by the Aurora phosphate plants. And so there's a lot of terrific resources that are here that are unique, I think, to North Carolina.
The other thing is, too, is environmental sensitivity. I mean, I just found out on a tour of Beaufort last week that North Carolina has more protected beaches than any other state and that sort of thing. So I think that awareness and that love of the environment and that need to sort of do the right thing and protect the environment is really here.
It's got a lot of coastline if you look at the surface.
No, it does. I think mine are relative. I don't know. That's just it's the folks at the Duke Center up there were taking us on the tour and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I love North Carolina. I think it's a really great place. I think that there's such a diversity of people, and there's such a diversity of academics, and there's such a diversity of business. And then we've got the Research Triangle Park, and that precedence that's been set for research. And I mean, the list kind of goes on and on. The Biofuels Center. I mean, there's very few states that have a huge multi-million-dollar center dedicated to biofuels. I mean, that's very unique. So, I'm making the case for North Carolina.
This gentleman's been so good.
Poor guy.
the best one to answer, but I'll start off with Kathy, I suppose. As my impression listening to the discussion is, it seems like the primary motivation is energy independence, in addition to obviously environmental benefits. Question one is regarding sequester of carbon. You're doing it at the manufacturing level. People are fairly Pavlovian in their habits, so as biofuel becomes successful, if the people want more of it, what happens to the carbon in the user side? Question number two is, do you see also with the growth of biofuels, do you see a scenario where...
And if you're producing a biofuel that's going to get burned, but you're also sequestering carbon in that same cycle, I don't know that it would be passed on to the consumer just yet at the pump. Are you about the carbon, paying for the carbon, is that what you're asking?
No, I'm saying carbon coming from exhaust pipes.
Well,
It's carbon neutral, so that's a real positive thing with what we're doing. So we're growing and sequestering a certain amount of carbon. As a matter of fact, 2 tons of carbon dioxide for every 1 ton of algae produced. But then if that goes into the lipid and it then gets burned and goes back up into the atmosphere, guess what? Our algae is then consuming it again. So it's not that we're not putting the carbon out, it's just that it's a cycle. And so it's called carbon neutral.
think of it, we're not living...
Carbon induction, it's more, yeah.
We got to get out of living in the lithosphere, just pumping carbon straight out. We need to live in the biosphere where we recycle it. And so it's conservation of matter. The same amount of stuff that was on the planet at the beginning is still here. We just have to use it and cycle it to our benefit. And right now we just like to burn.
Well, because it really isn't like we say CO2 is a pollutant, but it's really not. I mean, too much of it becomes a problem. Too much of anything. I mean, if I ate a bottle of cinnamon right now, I'd drop dead. You know, I mean, too much of I mean, really, too much of anything is a bad thing. You know, so with CO2, we just need to figure out how to take it back in and use it for what it's meant to be, and not get, everything's out of balance. You know. And I think that the United States has sort of kicked off this whole thing this past 100 years, so that we should really ramp our efforts up to become the leader in this sort of thing. But so like Dr. Jones said, it's carbon neutral, if not carbon induction, which gets into the whole thing of carbon credits and carbon trading, cap and trade, and the whole thing. And that's a big part of our business model too, because we have like $24 million in carbon credits and that sort of thing. So. It's sort of far-reaching in terms of the business side of it. And, it's almost kind of too good to be true, though. When you present people, it's like the DEP. When you present them with too good to be true, they don't know what to do with it. They're like, you're not going to get any emissions. What does that mean? A $250 million plant not polluting at all, and in fact, cleaning up the water. I mean, that's the other big thing I think Matt touched on too. Is this area has a huge water issue on all levels. Like, what do we do with it? How do we clean it? Like the whole thing. And so. I've worked a little bit with the Cape River Watch and some local folks here, and all of what we're working on will clean the water. And that's a huge issue. And water's the next oil in terms of limited resource. And there are a billion people right now today that don't have clean water to drink. And so, water is another huge issue, just like energy, that's not getting as much presence as it should, I think.
And as far as algae belt, we have zero oil production, petroleum production in the state. But we have plenty of sunshine, plenty of rain, a very diverse, ecosystem across the state. Plenty of academics. We've got our urbanized areas and lots of,
plenty of wastewater. Plenty of wastewater. We've got a lot of black water here in the state, so we're not looking for nutrients.
It could be.
Florida's putting a lot of money into algae and promoting all of those businesses, and so Florida will be known as the algae state. So we're in competition. We want to be known as the algae belt.
I suppose that there's a negative slant for my question, though, which is that at some point in the future there will be a need for reducing biodiversity by introducing monocultures or small monocultural systems for the use of biofuel.
Those monocultures already exist.
Yeah. Well, it's about balance, too. It's all, and what we're talking about is a very sort of balanced way of approaching this. Again, anything in excess can ultimately be bad, but, But like Dr. Jones said too, even this here at Greenfield Lake, I just heard, a few weeks ago they put a bunch of algae in the lake, and I was like, oh, I'm like, really? You're killing the algae?
And guys, that's treating the symptom, it's not a solution, because that biomass sinks to the bottom, as it decomposes, it burns up more oxygen, you get eutrophication.
And then what happens to the algae side, and what fish are eating it? all of that, so it's a less bad algae side, I heard, but yeah, it's tragic. But anyway.
Yeah, I want to be sensitive to everyone's bedtimes and to the time of what we now know really are our biofuels experts here, and just sort of say, stick around and become part of the hardcore staying in to talk more about biofuels crew if you want to, but please feel free. I'm going to just suggest, we're right at 8 right here, and there's a lot more to say, obviously. Yeah, but maybe 1 or 2 more questions. I don't know. Another question, a couple more minutes, but then we'll take a break, stretch your legs some more. You can come back and be part of that hardcore crew if you want, but I want to let these guys go home. So maybe let's do 1 more question. We'll all stand up. Turn off the lights if you want to leave at that point, then that's fine. We'll turn back on the lights.
My question has to do with the international status of R&D. We hear all the time about the U.S. losing its lead. Now we have Brazil with the ethanol. That's been long established. What's going on internationally in a very broad scale, summary kind of way because of time? And is there good international cooperation that's taking place? It seems to me that everybody's got this problem of alternative energy sources. So what's that perspective from you?
I would just say that it's a win-win for everybody around the world if we could make this work in any capacity. And personally, I've been approached by the Philippines in particular, had a biofuels delegation in Washington in April. And it was really interesting to get to sit down and talk with all of their biofuels CEOs in this one place. And it was fantastic to speak with them and see what their needs and perspective was, because I thought they would be the experts in the room. The Philippines has been known for culturing algae for centuries, but it's focused on food and not fuel. And so it's a very different process and what their focus is. And they were very interested in what we had to offer and what we could bring to them internationally. And I know that you've been approached probably in the same capacity. The Netherlands are working a lot.
Yeah, we had some partnerships going on that once the light doors kind of petered out. But we've definitely been approached by international players for sure. A lot of our members and board members and corporate officers are, we're very diverse in terms of that too. There's a lot of interest and there's a lot going on internationally. It's sometimes hard to form lasting relationships in such a pioneering, we were talking about this earlier, it's such a pioneering kind of industry or such a burgeoning industry, because there's a lot of sort of trepidation about those arrangements and getting all parties comfortable, and all that sort of stuff takes a long time, and you're kind of in a startup mode, you're kind of already like, don't have enough time and don't have enough resources, so it's a little bit hard to form those kinds of alliances in that sense, because we aren't really established huge corporations already and that sort of thing, but there's definitely been a lot of dialogue, for sure, and there's a lot going on internationally, and I think Dr. Jones touched on some of those other alliances in her presentation as well.
There were alliances that were about people looking for the end product because they wanted to meet their own country's standards, but we didn't talk about R&D. Nobody mentioned the Chinese. They're, omnipresent and everything.
Yes, they are. And they would like to, every coal-fired plant they have, they would love to have an algae culturing system attached to it, and they're working very much to that end. And so you're absolutely right. There's some negatives of doing it with the coal-fired plants, as Matt kind of alluded to, but they're overcoming. And I think we have a lot of the technologies for a lot of these applications. We've just never tried to make it work for algae. We spent millions killing algae, and now all of a sudden we're going, okay, how can we control growing it? Yeah, this might really be a resource instead of a nuisance. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. On the international scene, there's a lot of money being thrown at it in different capacities.
An interesting driver on the international front, we were just talking